Welcome back, Peter Kibazo, Shaka Sali, and Dr. Livingstone Sewanyana. And it is that pre-election discussion. We have the privilege of having Dr. Shaka Sali here with us in the studio and Dr. Livingstone Sewanyana. And you viewers joining us online from wherever you are, our numbers will be displayed on your set. You're able to call in. Please keep your calls as brief and precise as possible, and the gentleman in the studio will be able to respond to you. Hello? Yes, good evening. Yes.
Now, so far, I've got a message from the Electoral.
Yes.
That the service from 8 in the morning.
I'm not sure I actually deconstruct your point, but I've had that talk. Viewers, our numbers are displayed on the set. You're able to join us, make your comment precise. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, good evening.
Oh, good evening. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Your name, question or comment? Hello? Sorry? Yes.
These people, I think they are analyzing what happened during the break and what's going on. But especially like the way
Yes, we can hear you.
it's just confusing, yes, because most of us we understand, and the incumbent is still campaigning up to now. With the electoral commission, the chairman, Mr. Chico said that all that was ended yesterday at 6. I look at it, he is still campaigning.
Where is he campaigning?
He is trying to confuse us that Dr. Beck is intimidating people in his area. I don't know really that is that impunity or I don't know good about it.
Thank you. Gentlemen, two things here. One, of course, they challenge our partiality or the absence of that on the set, particularly Dr. Shaka. Of course, the latter caller says no. He thinks that it is actually a different challenge. But also the issue of the threat of violence from all the sets that are campaigning. Shaka, would you like to address the issue of partiality and the elite being gravitating towards the opposition, and yourself particularly?
Well, you see, the thing is for me, really, as a journalist, if someone were to accuse me for being biased in the favor of the truth, I would accept. No, sincerely. I am not about personalities.
Yes.
I'm not about ideology. I am simply looking for the truth and wherever it takes me. And you know, there's a saying that the greatest friend of the truth is time. Her greatest enemy is ignorance or prejudice, while her constant companion is humility.
Dr. Sewanyana, talk about the threat of violence. It is an existential threat in this election. It's been addressed. I've listened to text and tape from the Inspector General of Police when he talks about arming the crime preventers. Of course, subsequently, he returns to say that he was quoted out of context. I've listened to the Secretary General of the NRM saying that those that shall demonstrate or will demonstrate shall be shot and killed in very precise terms. And she says she doesn't regret those statements. I know that the political commissar of the army, my friend Colonel Felix Kulaije, has said No, the statement was out of context and she's withdrawn it, but she hasn't herself. I've also had the questions about the Defiance campaign, that the Defiance campaign is actually a militia that is being built. All that gravitates towards one thing, that we have an existential threat of violence in this election or after the election.
Yeah, but perhaps, Peter, before I respond to the whole question of possible threats of violence, I think I need also to respond to Mr. Mwine. Mr. Mwine,
That says reading your face.
Yeah, with due respect to his views, I do respect him for his views. I think he must realize that there is an increasing level of polarization of our society. There is a tendency for people to be to think in one direction, not to open up to other views, and that has a serious danger to our society, because as long as you want to hear one thing and you want people to say exactly what you want to hear, there is a danger that we cannot actually create the necessary consensus. And I think in many ways that is a crisis, and which needs to be addressed. For example, it says that we have not addressed ourselves to issues of the Defiance campaign. We have been, as observers, calling for strict adherence to the campaign guidelines, and among those are issues to do with the language, adherence to the 6 p.m. rule and the like. Now, going back to the whole question of the threat of possible violence, I think if you look back and you ask yourself, for example, yes, the whole concept of community policing is highly appreciated and actually is entrenched in our Constitution. And I agree with the Inspector General of Police on that whole issue that, yes, if the police is thin, it can be reinforced. This afternoon, the Inspector General of Police said crime preventers should be seen within the context of neighborhood watch. But the challenge we face here are the sort of statements that have been made which tend to contradict. One, for example, the President Tentebbe is quoted when he was asked about crime preventers. He called them a reserve force. For him, and the Inspector General of Police, he says today he says they are community volunteers. The other day is quoted to have said he's going to arm them. Now, it's those contradictions that actually create serious challenges. Who are they exactly? For us, we have been asking...
Under what law have they been constituted?
What is the legal framework? How do they relate to the regular police? What will be their role? We are aware that, for example, they are going to be employed for 2 months and then disbanded. Now, if they are disbanded, what actually happens? You are talking about so many young people with promises who are not adequately trained. What happens to such a group? These are the questions we pose. So it becomes real. What happened? Aren't they likely, for example, if they are disbanded, if the promises are not made, to misuse that power that they have been given through the creation of such a force? These are the questions. When you look back at some of the statements, like the one you have alluded to of then I'm Secretary General, this is a fact. I know some people would say, "Oh, you are biased," but that is a fact. I mean, she is quoted to have said, "Anyone who will protest will definitely be shot." But the Constitution of Uganda, Article 29, subsection E, confers upon Ugandans the right to demonstrate peacefully, to protest peacefully, as long as they are not armed. So what is the danger? So
and the Police Act procedurally gives the police how to deal with demonstrations and riots. You start with a megaphone, from the megaphone you proceed to the baton, you proceed to water cannons, and by the time you graduate to what they call reasonable force, you have exhausted the whole procedure. Of course, that may not be true with the Ugandan police, in spite of the text being written in the law.
Yeah, but of course, on the other hand, you also have a population that sometimes becomes rowdy, becomes unruly, and needs to be contained. And in some instances, they also pose a threat to the lives of the policemen. That is also real. So we need to have a balancing act. By the way, there is evidence to show that where the police has not unnecessarily interfered with some of these meetings, they have been held peacefully. And where they have unduly interfered, there have been disruptions and violence has erupted. So what are we demanding? We are saying, if you really want peace, if you want stability, if you want respect for law and order, it is important that guidelines, codes of conduct, behavior is regulated. And we are also equally urging the population all the time to say, look, you should not engage in violence, in acts that perpetuate crime. So that balancing act sometimes is lacking. And also it is attributed to the fact that the majority of our population are youth. And these youth are unemployed. And the stakes are very high. So sometimes when you say don't engage in acts of violence, as long as they do not seem to be reinforced, they seem to be living on the margins of society, they do behave accordingly. So how do you balance that? And that is where we are saying increasingly we need to have role models, we need to adhere to the law, and we need, of course, to give credit where it is due. For example, Peter, just one last thing here. We have given credit, for example, to the police in as far as the campaigns are concerned. There have been so many campaigns. There have been few cases or isolated cases of violence, and we do give credit where it is due. But where you see a clear case of abuse, we definitely must also come out and speak out against it.
Shaka, does it benefit the regime to beat the war drums, or does it actually create fear against the regime and anger by the youth to dare the regime?
It depends, of course, what the objective is. If the objective is to intimidate would-be supporters of the opposition, then maybe they think they're doing the right thing. But if, on the other hand, they think the objective is to demonstrate that they are the anointed ones and what have you, and therefore you are wasting your time supporting the opposition, then maybe, given the fact that, as Dr. Sewanyana said, people seem to be becoming a little bit more socially and politically conscious as a result of the civic education that he was talking about. In that case, then they may actually have problems. Maybe that's why there are also people, as we talked a little bit earlier, who are leaving the city, going back to their villages to go and cast their votes.
I'll take this call as well. Hello? Yes, good evening. Hello, good evening. Hello?
Hello, Twaha.
Yes, Twaha, talk to us. Sorry about that. Viewers, do not wait to hear yourself on your set, because there will always be a slight delay between when you call us and when the call comes through. Hello? Good evening, hello?
Okay. This is Joseph Kamgisha.
Yes, Joseph.
Okay, and I'm saying my comment is, Museveni is a good person, we cannot deny.
Sorry, I missed that. Hello, Kamgisha? Sorry, Joseph, your line failed. We'll try two more, and if the line isn't good, we'll let it go. Hello? Hello? Yes, we can hear you. Talk to us. Good evening. Fine, thank you. Will you speak a little louder? Okay. It doesn't look like the line is good. We'll try that a little later. Gentlemen, the trust in the Electoral Commission is the cornerstone of an election. Win it or lose it. There may be irregularities, but if people have trust, they'll say that's a one-off. What does the Electoral Commission do to earn that trust between today and when the election is finally announced? With a hindsight on Kenya, Nigeria.
I think what the Electoral Commission has to do is to demonstrate that we can have a smooth election. It has to make sure that the guidelines that they have issued are adhered to. It has to make sure that there is prompt delivery of materials. It has to make sure that the presiding and polling officials actually act responsibly. It must make sure that any grievance that comes out is responded to as quickly as possible. It must make sure that the results actually, when the votes are counted, the results are tabulated, and actually whatever they read reflects what is on the ground. All these, if done properly, would to a large extent exonerate them from that perception. As long as the machines work, as long as the officers behave accordingly.
Dr. Sawanyane, you can have a failure of machines. They failed in Nigeria. Very much the same machines we have, the biometric system. The transmission failed in Kenya.
But they should make sure that their plan B is working, because they have told us they will have manual registers alongside the machines. So they need to make sure that they are there and they can actually be resorted to in case of need. So if they conduct that exercise in a way that, you know, satisfies even those who doubt them, then at least they would have gone a long way. But of course, the whole question of credibility of the Electoral Commission is a perception issue. Perception because of many factors, and I think our friends who were in DC did allude to them. There are issues to do with how they were appointed. Not that they are bad people, they're actually very competent and very knowledgeable people, but the mode of appointment, issues of security of tenure, the funding, the ability to realize their plans, all these go to the whole question. And even the nature of pronouncements, because there has been, for example, some ambiguity about whether we have phones or we don't have phones. You know, those sort of proclamations.
My cameraman actually asks for your reaction on the issue of phones, on whether the phones should be allowed within the polling center or cameras should be or shouldn't be allowed.
The Electoral Commission has actually come out to clarify on this now, I think on several occasions. One, when they were debriefing election observers, and even this afternoon when they held a press conference where they say no one has been banned from having his or her phone. The only restriction they are imposing has to do with using that phone while in the polling booth.
Which is understandable, I think.
Their argument is that they have to protect the secrets of the vote. So, but you see, because of perceptions and because of so many, you know, uncontrolled messages, there are people who still do not listen to that clarification. They are still bent on what was published on Saturday that they had banned. When you talk to them, they say they were misquoted. They were simply saying,
or they miscommunicated.
Or perhaps it is an issue of miscommunication. So, but still, because of, you know, because of the context, the issue of trust, even when they clarify, for example, they have tried to clarify on the national ID, they have tried to clarify on the voter allocation slip, but you still hear people saying, but.
Okay. But isn't perception often a reflection of political reality?
Indeed.
Look at the EC's track record during the campaigning period. How did it behave? Was it really an impartial, neutral player? It was seen to be very, very partisan. Just like a lot of people, in fact, view the police as very partisan, to the extent that some of them do not even think it is accurate to refer to it as the Uganda police. They would rather say that it is an NRM police of sorts. This is how people look at it, because whenever they go to, they tried as much as they could, a lot of times, to prevent opposition, politicians or presidential candidates from campaigning, from holding rallies and all that kind of stuff. On the other hand, you never really saw that kind of situation happening to the ruling party.
Talk about defiance, Shaka.
Defiance, I think, is probably another word really for civil disobedience. The sort of civil disobedience that is associated with the Mahatma Gandhi of India as the father of it, really. Martin Luther King Jr., the kind of democratic weapon that he used in the United States, and even the Mandelas, for that matter, to a certain degree, in South Africa against apartheid.
Yeah, but there's been a fear that the defiance is actually, and Dr. Chigundu, I find the statement rather wanting of objectivity and casting the Electoral Commission in a bad light when he says, if I had a choice, I wouldn't have nominated Dr. Chiza Besigye for a presidential candidate.
That is very unfortunate.
Yeah, I find the statement extremely unfortunate. But he says, how can you have a candidate that from the point go says, I am standing here to defy the electoral laws, to defy the systems of state? And he says, that is not how you need a collaboration. You need an understanding between candidates and the commission for them to earn your trust and for you to carry on.
It may have been a good thing for him actually to talk against the, talk about the defiance campaign being not being a particularly good thing. But you know that he was not the only person that reacted to the defiance campaign. You had the Inspector General of the police. You, in fact, also had the Chief of Defense Forces, my friend General Katumba Wamala, come out about it. The president also has come out come out about it. And yet when the president actually says, I cannot hand over power, you do not hear the Electoral Commission saying anything. You do not hear the Inspector General of Police, nor do you hear the Chief of Defense Forces. Why? And these double standards?
Well, they salute to him. They salute to the president.
But for now, he's a presidential candidate. Because frankly, if you are not willing to hand over power, then why do we even have an election?
But a people can, with or without the agreement of an electoral commission or a state, overwhelm that. That is possible. It has happened.
In what sense?
They can overwhelm the electoral commission.
Well, depending on the composition of the electoral commission. In places where some of those things have happened, you have some relatively independent electoral commissions whose members sometimes reflect the political reality of that particular society, where you do have at least party representation on the board, on the committee. And of course, there have been some very unique situations like in the Philippines, in 1986. That is because the cardinal or the bishop of the Catholic Church actually became the leader, went to the street. And majority of the people in the Philippines are Catholics. Even some members of the Electoral Commission and what have you began to defect and to sing. That was the end of Marcos.
Dr. Sewanyana, that ability of the people, in spite of the perceived or real biases of the commission of the state, that capacity of the people to overwhelm the system, does it exist here? Is it a visible, possible capacity? It doesn't matter for which side.
Of course, we have seen instances where people have stood out against any acts of intimidation or, persecution. We have seen that. We have seen, for example, running battles of the opposition and the police. We have seen running battles between the police and the youth. We have seen running battles. I think there is a...
We've also seen
Exactly.
the opposition win by-elections in
Exactly.
heavily contested areas
Yeah.
where the regime thought that it wouldn't be. Luero, for example, which is regarded as the heartbeat of the NRM.
Yeah.
You've seen a by-election in Bra where a member of parliament won against the regime.
Yeah, actually, there is evidence of that. But the question is whether, I don't want to use these legal terminologies, whether it's substantial.
Let me try this. Hello? Yes, good evening.
Yes, sir.
Good evening to you. Talk to us.
Yeah, Adam.
Yes, Adam.
Yeah, actually, Bane, travel channel no manage to phone. Joe, when I have when Kenya, so I told the world about the day, Lisa, or it. And I told the teaching, the call can the Jomo Kureshi. The police, they get a nega mantino, a rule, a want to go out to Tenabo, or the bank to take police. Yeah, that year, what they call boxing, to get a clue, they have.
Thank you. Quickly, the gentleman still raises the question of trust. Says that there is a suspected box that was got in Bulisa. I've seen it photographed all over social media. I don't know the authenticity of it, but it still raises the question of trust.
Exactly.
That can it happen that a box has electoral material delivered to the wrong place or delivered already pre-ticked?
Again, because we are facing that crisis of trust, sometimes you don't know what to believe and what not to believe. I mean, sometimes it could be true that happens, but it could also be concocted. I mean, if you read social media, you follow social media of late, I mean, there are so many utterances sometimes which are, you cannot even imagine. Where there is a lack of trust, you definitely expect all sorts of creations. How do you overcome that? Yeah, if that has happened, let them come out very clearly as the authorities and say this has not happened or it has happened, or if it has happened, they prosecute these people. If they don't speak out against that, then you can't earn the trust of the people.
Hello?
Yes,
Yes, good evening.
good evening to you. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Your name, question, or comment?
Yes,
Talk to us.
yes.
Hello? Please, will you speak a little louder? Emmanuel? I'm sorry, your line isn't the most clear. We need to get out of here, Dr. Shaka and Dr. Livingstone Sewanyana. But as we get out, I'm thinking backwards and I'm thinking of Kenya. Kenya in 2007 was a fireball after the election. The subsequent election, in spite of discomforts, Raila Odinga and his team ended up in court, and they said they needed Kenya and they needed to keep Kenya as a single unit that they will need tomorrow and the next day. Is that a possibility in Uganda, that we've had our worst, and after this election we are able to forge forward no matter the result? Or am I being a huge optimist?
It's quite possible. Kenya has a very huge middle class
Yes.
community, and it is invested in the element of stability. They saw what happened to them in 2008. They frankly didn't want to go there again. The other factor is they devised some very fair means, for example, of appointing a Chief Justice. And the Chief Justice that is sitting in that chair right now, William Mutunga, had impeccable credentials and respect that cut across really, especially among the middle class community and what have you. So I think whereas the Raila Odingas may have lost an election, they may in fact have had faith in the possibility of getting a fair hearing in the Supreme Court.
Dr. Sewanyana, as we get out, you've been monitoring elections. You have a team of 1,000 or so people that are monitoring elections. What is the feed you're getting out of there so far?
Of course, there are issues to do. Of course, as the campaigns were going on, with adherence to the rules, that there doesn't seem to have been strict adherence to the guidelines by some candidates. We have information to the effect that there has been quite a number of cases of voter bribery. We have there are areas that have been identified as hotspots,
those
which are prone to electoral violence. Actually, 10 of them were noted. We have also seen, you know, generally a strong feeling among the people that maybe things may not work out. So you get those sort of feelers. But all in all, we are trying to implore the population that they have a golden opportunity that they must take advantage of to vote, and if there are grievances, that they can be resolved through resort to courts of law. The courts have increasingly been preparing themselves for that, and like my brother has said, I think we have an impeccable Chief Justice now in Uganda. We can also take advantage of that.
Yes, I know the Honorable Chief Justice, Honorable Bart Katurege, and I think he's received a lot of confidence from Ugandans,
Right.
and he needs to earn it as well. And viewers, we have to go out and wish you a good and peaceful election tomorrow. We hope wherever you vote from. Where are you voting from?
I'm voting from Mukono. That's where my place is.
Shaka definitely won't be voting.
Yes.
I don't know whether he will be watching any of the elections. Will you be going round at all?
I will try.
Right. And till tomorrow, catch you viewers. Our team will be continuing to cover the process of the elections and the whole voting process until the results start coming in, and you'll be kept fed by the media, and wish you a peaceful election, and watch the peace. Uganda is here. It shall be here today. It shall be here even after the elections. Good night.